Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. No, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the FPV News. It's good to be here with you, and it's good to be here with you, Blunty. We've got some big stories.
Yes, we do. It's another wonderful FPV news day.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, I got some wonderful stories for you.
It is good that we're here today, especially I was out of town. That's why I didn't stream on Sunday. Had a brief trip, and now I'm going on a longer trip, and this is slotted right in between when I got home and when I leave. But we should start off by letting people know the sad news that we won't be here next week or the week after. So we'll get that right out of the way. Everyone can wipe their tears away. Yeah, so no stream on the 14th or the 21st, and we'll be back on the 28th for the news. FYI. But that's not the tone we want to start off on. We need to start off on a positive tone.
Yeah.
I have a piece of good news.
What's that?
There is no way that Chinese balloon could be related to FPV at all, which means we don't have to talk about it.
That's true. I have one more piece of good news.
What's that?
My the graphics card is working again. For people who knew, my graphics card was not working. My 2080 Ti has come back to life after some tender love and care and cleaning and power cable swapping and things.
Tender loving care, Blunty. So your graphics card stopped working after your move for no apparent reason.
Yes.
And then the tender loving care, I think it was actually rage induced. It didn't sound that loving when you were describing it to me before the call.
Yes, I was attempting to condemn it to the graveyard, but instead it works now. So yeah.
Great. It's like it's undead. You are the graphics card necromancer.
Yeah, I'm also afraid to touch anything. But
right, because like maybe there was just like a piece of dust on it or something, or maybe if you touch it again, it will stop working.
Yes.
But this does mean, well, the main thing this means is that your background noise isolation is back on again.
That's true. Yeah, for anybody who might have heard my typing in previous episodes,
that's true.
I should not hear any typing anymore.
You know, I noticed your typing, and then it seemed weird to me, and I realized that's because usually I can't hear it. But I don't have that. I don't use that. I don't like it. I could. I just don't want to. But let's go to our first article, first segment of the show. Public service announcements, little things that don't affect very many people, but that if they do affect you, they're kind of a big freaking deal. So we're just going to start off by telling you about them.
Yeah.
And this one has to do with the Pyrodrone CNC gimbal for the Tango 2.
Yeah. So people have been reporting that the CNC gimbals for the Tango 2 from Pyrodrone have had the magnet fall out of the back. It's basically come unglued and fell out of the bottom of the Hall sensor slot there. So we've got some pictures of that, so you can see from two different users, both Lucas and Timothy sent us some pictures of their issues. But if suddenly one of your gimbals stops working, maybe you can pull your radio apart and make sure you didn't drop a magnet out of the bottom of the gimbal.
Yeah, this is where the magnet was.
Yeah, you should be able to glue it right back in there, and that's what other users have done. We did reach out to Pyrodrone for a comment, and Pyrodrone let us know that basically this has been around 12 people they've seen with this issue, and they estimate based on sales, and if it's 4 or 5 times how many people have already reported, it's probably around 2.5% of the gimbals have this issue, and that should be resolved by gluing it back. But they did say if you want to reach out to them, they are happy to help you out by getting this fixed for you. So
when I first heard about this, I thought, well, this is probably just a one-off thing. It's probably not worth covering. And I certainly didn't want to be seen as poking at anybody in particular. No product is perfect. There have been rounds of JB flight controllers that had issues with the 9-volt regulator. So it's like, well, if it's a one-off thing, then it's probably not worth mentioning. But then a whole separate person spontaneously emailed me about it. It's like, okay, well, we just want to let you know that if that happens, so first of all, if you put in those gimbals and they suddenly stopped working, this may be why. You may need to open up your radio and see if the magnet fell out. If it did, you can just glue it back in, or you can send it back to Pyrodrone and they'll fix it. And Blunty, I think they also said that they expect that this may have had to do with like a little bit of a rush going into Chinese New Year, and it probably won't happen. I imagine they're also probably kicking somebody's butt, so it won't happen again.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you that this won't be an issue in the future. So yeah, they said it's our belief that as a result of factory rushing to get these into our hands, it will not be an issue in the future. In all caps, will not. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay, and Pyrodrone definitely stands behind their products. If they say it will not be an issue, then it certainly won't. And I had another PSA that we decided not to put in because we decided that it was just, people not understanding how magnets work. But there was another PSA, which was a guy who took his gimbals out and set them down on the table, and his table was covered with metal shavings, and the magnets picked up a whole bunch of metal shavings. And then he didn't notice, and he put the gimbals back in the radio, and then his gimbals didn't work right. So they have magnets in them. If you put them down in a bunch of metal shavings, that's going to be an issue. All right, little mini PSA there.
Yeah, PSA.
All right.
And then we also have a follow-up to a previous PSA, which were the 03 Jello issues that we talked about before. And we talked about how hopefully DJI would take care of it if enough people complained. And we did want to let you know that so far it looks like DJI's response is sort of the opposite of that.
Oh.
And hopefully by publicizing it, maybe they'll give a different response, or maybe other people can see this. But basically they said the YouTuber removed the shell of the camera. However, after the shell is removed, it's bad for the camera. We don't recommend this. They say that the reason is still the shaky video is the vibration of the body itself transmitted to the camera, which needs to be solved. Yeah, motor imbalance causes vibration. Basically, they're saying it's not the PWM in this case because your frame sucks or your build sucks. Fix your build.
Well, here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with that. The issue is that people are experiencing Jello with the 03 camera, especially with EIS turned on, image stabilization turned on. And DJI's answer is, and this is in the DJI manual too, it's not a new answer, is that it's some problem with your build. It's your fault. Vibration, resonance, PWM frequency, blah, blah, blah. But who was it? Who was the YouTuber? Was it Do you remember the name? I don't remember the name.
Yeah, I put it all in the links here. So it was...
The original video.
Yeah, the video was from Darren Allett.
Darren Allett, yes, of course. Darren Allett. Yeah. I know Darren. The problem with DJI's claim is that Darren opened his camera up, glued the thing, and then it fixed the Jello.
Exactly the problem I have with this response.
Pretty definitive. So they didn't say, yes, that does fix the problem, but there's other issues. So we don't recommend you do it. They were like, no, that's not it. It's this other thing. Well, no, it isn't. Because as soon as you glue the camera down, if you don't get dust inside the camera when you open it up, so scary. As soon as you glue it down, the problem is fixed.
Yeah, the problem is they are, Crafted Quads mentions there's two separate issues that can happen. One is, you're having resonance Jello issues from the frame and the build and PWM and all that. And there's another issue, which is that the camera is loose inside the camera and needs to be glued in. And if you glue it in, you get rid of the main Jello issue that people are talking about. And
That's a good point, Blunty.
Thank
you for that perspective.
The DJI reps need to understand that, this is a fixable issue and is separate from the other issue.
Yeah, Crafted Quads has a great distinction here. Jello in the live video is unsecured housing and needs glue. Jello in the stabilized video, but not the live video, is vibrations getting to the gyro and needs to be fixed with PWM. And DJI sounds like doesn't understand that there are two separate issues here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is unfortunate for people who are trying to get this fixed without opening up their camera and shoving some glue in there. But at least currently that's DJI's response. So hopefully we can get the message across somehow and DJI can get that figured out and get that fixed.
DJI, there are two issues. I take back what I said about the PWM thing. That's also real. You're right. I got a little carried away. The PWM thing is real, and sometimes it affects people. If you did the glue fix and it still didn't help, maybe you would have PWM problems. But there's another issue that you need to be aware of. Okay.
Yep. All right. One more DJI story, which is... It's been a while since we've done this, but we do have one more DJI story for people. Just a quick one. The DJI OG Air Unit. We talked about months ago at this point. The Air Unit was going to end. They were going to get rid of the original fat Air Unit with the SD card slot. It's been time because the 03 was coming out and they were rotating stock and all that stuff. Well, it looks like we finally come to that point. The Caddx is going to stop production of their Caddx Air Unit micro camera. That's the little one that ships with their Air Unit. That's silver in the micro size, shown in the picture down there. And that's because they're they're running out of Air Units. So it looks like the stock is finally gone for these. But we weren't. But I was just going to say we weren't sure 100% that the Air Units were actually ending or it was Caddx, right? So I reached out to RunCam. And RunCam also replied that DJI does have the plan to end the Air Unit, leaving the Air Unit Lite, the Link or the Vista that we know of, and the 03 Air Unit still around.
So first of all, I appreciate you putting this picture in here because when I first saw this story, I thought it was the other, I don't know, can I just search for DJI FPV camera and find it? I thought it was this camera, this one. Hang on. Let me zoom out here. I thought it was this camera. So this camera is still going to keep getting made?
I think that camera hasn't been made for a while, or it's only been direct from DJI or something. My impression, the micro cam was a replacement for that camera, and now that camera is also discontinued.
Okay. So does that? What about the Caddx?
As far as I know, all their other cameras will continue to be made.
Oh well, that's okay.
Because they haven't announced any of the rest of the cameras ending. So until we hear other news, I imagine they're only announcing one camera ending because it's specific, right? So.
Yeah, the Nebula Pro is a good camera. I'd take the Nebula Pro. That's a fine camera.
Yeah.
And also, I think I'm going to take this statement from Caddx about the Air Unit ending with a giant grain of salt because Caddx has said stuff in the past about stuff that hasn't turned out to work out.
That's why we have the RunCam statement at the bottom. That's what I'm saying. RunCam also agrees.
Oh, that's a RunCam statement.
Yes.
Oh, I see that now.
Yeah. So RunCam also says the Air Unit is ending and agrees with Caddx's statement.
But, just to be clear, only this big Air Unit, not the little Vista Air Unit.
Yeah, not the Link or Vista or Air Unit Lite, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
So, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Just if you think about the sales difference in these, how many people are buying Lynx and Vistas versus Air Units? It probably makes a lot of sense on DJI's back end to just stop making Air Units, especially now that they have the O3 and the V2 goggles support it. Most users are going to be able to go to that if they really want that Air Unit option. And most people are buying Vistas and stuff anyway instead.
Yeah, anybody who wants what are the advantages of the big Air Unit? Mainly it's onboard recording. And if you want onboard recording... And it doesn't work. Good point. The SD card's slow.
For many users, it doesn't work.
So you're just going to get the O3. You're going to get that 4K on board. Way back when the Goggles 2 were first getting ready to come out, we talked about the possibility that this could spell the end of the V2 generation of equipment. I would have to go back and review the tapes to remind myself how, in my memory, we were just like, well, guys, we got to accept that this might be happening. And, in my memory, we weren't very definitive about it. Someone maybe go back and find a clip and prove me wrong. I think that we can accept that DJI is going to keep making the V2, the Vista generations, VTXs for the foreseeable future. That doesn't seem like they're getting ready to pull the rug on that to me.
Probably not. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that we can say that yet because it is DJI, so who knows, right? What they're thinking and what they're selling and what the differences in O3s and how much they want to move the stock and all that kind of jazz. But I would assume that we'll get those produced for a while. And even if we don't, similar to the Air Unit having a lot of stock around, I imagine the Vistas will also have a lot of stock. The Lynx will also have a lot of stock. So.
Yeah. That's nice. A lot of people prefer the Vista to the O3, if only for price reasons. So, good. Alrighty. Next up, we are going to talk about
toroidal propeller. So everybody is going crazy with these toroidal propellers. Everybody is it's everywhere. It's the most popular story I've seen in a long time. And that means that people are attempting to 3D print these because obviously, why not? That's what MIT did, right? So, compare and contrast and see how they work, and that's what we got from a lot of people this last week or so. First one we got is from Quad Mover, who put together his own version of these. And has a testing video of him.
Astounded that they can hold up to the stress of flying.
Yeah, it seems like in many cases the PLA ones for people can't. It's PETG is what most people are using for these.
Yeah.
And those seem to hold up. But he does have a link to the flight down there if you want to hop to it's like 104.
Well, we need sound for this. Well, it's flying.
Definitely an interesting sound profile.
Yeah. I wish... Does he have 5-inch props in here as well? I'd love a side-by-side with 5-inch props. It definitely isn't quiet.
Yeah, he compares it with an 8-blade at 252.
Yeah, 8-blade is... That's different. I mean, I'd love to hear it with a 3-blade. Quad Mover, put a low pass on your footage to cut the wind noise.
I think his point was, I'm going to guess that the reason he did an 8 is because 8 is the most similar prop that we have currently, right? That you can buy.
Yeah.
Because it's spreading out the tips to 8 places.
Sure. There's a little bit more of a whistle, like a high-pitched whine on the 8-blade.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think it sure looks like it's moving faster on the 8-blade, too. 8-blade looks like it's performing way better.
But also, we've got PETG versus a purchased prop. So.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that's an issue with a lot of these testing that we're going to see. We've got another one from Recursion Labs who did a lot of bench testing on these. And while it is good data, he even points out at the end, it's difficult because, the propeller he's comparing against is a produced propeller.
Yeah, an injection molded prop is going to be more precise, maybe more complex. And what were his results, though? What did he conclude?
It seems like there might be something there, sort of the impression I got from what he said.
Yeah.
You know, some of the cases it did perform better than expected, but it's not like revolutionary, and it seems like it needs probably a lot more design refinement and testing. Because we're not even using MIT's design; it's not really released. You know, we're using designs from people who produce them. We've got a link to that as well. The next guy is a link to the guy who's been doing a lot of these designs and kind of pushing a lot of things I've seen as striking FPV. And yeah, we've got some of his designs on Thingiverse that he's got the V1, the V2, and a two-blade he developed.
Oh, that looks like a good design.
Yeah, so that was the V1, and then he also...
Anybody who's printing these on an FDM printer, unless you're doing like really small layer size, you're going to get ridges that are going to affect the performance. You really, really need them to be very smooth. Go ahead, Blunty.
Yeah, so it's just interesting to see that people are already getting some results with these and having fun trying to figure this stuff out. So I've got a couple other links in the notes, and we also got a link to that patent that we found for the toroidal propeller from MIT from 2017. But yeah, pretty cool stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Surprising.
So hopefully we'll be able to bring you more info later on as manufacturers maybe try to make some of these, or we can see more designs get tested and people figure out more info about where these belong.
Well, one thing's for sure, any manufacturer who rushes one of these out these days, like in the next week or so, if you can get one made, people are going to buy the shit out of it, at least for like, a week or two. Because so many people are interested in this. The videos on it are blowing up. It's so new and weird and different that people are dying to know more about it. So,
yeah.
Whoever comes up with an injection mold one of these that can be sold, just do one run. Don't do two. Sell out your first run, and then everyone will realize, I don't know, maybe it's a great idea. But I would be interested if somebody like an HQ or a Gem Fan did a special run of these just so we could properly test them. With an actual well-made injection molded prop. So.
Yeah. Well.
Wait, is it patented? That's a good point, Path.
Yeah. We got the patent right there. In the,
China
in the
doesn't
show
care
notes.
too much about that. It'll be okay.
That's also true.
Okay.
Okay. Next up, yeah, we got testing on toroidal propellers, and now we got to share some testing on motors that Chris Rosser did a little while back. So we wanted to give a shout out to Chris Rosser and some of the testing he did here on some different motors.
Yeah, there's some really interesting insights in here. Obviously, everyone can go watch Chris's whole video, but obviously also we're going to give a couple little things to look at. Chris is doing testing on a level I haven't seen before. Other people have built, like Engineer X and Ryan Harrell have built thrust stands and tested thrust stands, but Chris Rosser is testing with what he calls a dynamometer. Dynamometer? I think so. He's putting a big metal flywheel on here. Where's the picture of the flywheel?
Yeah, it's a little farther in.
Gotcha. Here we go. So he's not using a prop to load the motor. He's using this big metal flywheel, which has more mass and is more sort of repeatable and controllable than a prop to test the thrust, or torque rather, versus RPM curve of these motors. That's pretty cool. He's also using AM32 ESC instead of BL Heli, and his argument is that BL Heli has this... I don't even think he knows exactly what it is in the BL Heli code that's doing this. Maybe it's the DMAG code or something. But the torque curve for BL Heli, it looked like it ramps up and then suddenly backs off and then kind of spikes up, and it's really uneven and can obscure differences in the motors, whereas this orange line is the AM32 torque curve, which is smoother and more repeatable. Some people have asked, does this mean I should switch to an AM32 ESC? Maybe. I don't know. There aren't very many of them.
No, I think SkyStars is still the only people producing an AM32 ESC, other than you flashing one. You know, if you buy some BL32 ESCs are going to have a target, and then you can buy those ESCs and a flashing tool and then flash them yourself to get there if you want, and then you can't go back, obviously, because BL32 is licensed.
Right.
But yeah, if you did want to do that for testing, you could. I think, one of the reasons we haven't seen a lot of people doing AM32 content is just because of the issue of getting it and supporting it on our normal 4-in-1s. So.
Right. Gregory Hurst says BLHeli responded and said that it's one of their filters. And I think there's a point. We're going to look at some of Chris's results because some of them were very interesting, including the Mr. Steel motor. I have some thoughts about that. But one thing I think we have to ask before we look at those results is, if these results, Chris specifically said that the results in this test were different than the results in some of his previous tests. For example, the FPV cycle 25 millimeter motor. In his previous tests, it didn't really perform any better than like a 2207, and he concluded it was wasted on a 5-inch prop. In this test, it did a little bit better, and he concluded that the BLHeli 32 ESC wasn't getting the most of the motor. And that's fine. That's interesting. But 98% of people who are watching this are flying BLHeli 32 ESCs. At which point, if he's using an AM32 ESC, it's interesting, but it actually maybe isn't directly applicable to what most people are actually using.
The question is, do you want to know which is the better motor or which is the better motor for BL32, right? I think it's
exactly
two different questions. And I think I do agree that something could possibly be gained by going back and doing the same testing again, but doing it on BL32 for that reason, and then seeing how everything shakes out and what kind of differences we see, and how different it really ends up being in that case, And or the Mr. Steel motors have issues, but maybe those issues show differently with the output of BL32, right?
Well, should you test the Mr. Steel motors with KISS ESCs? Since that's how many, not everybody. The also point is this: there is no yes or no answer here. The point is that whenever you look at scientific data, you have to understand the preconditions that the experiment was designed to test, and you have to understand how that affects the results and how applicable those results are to you. And in this case, we're going to learn interesting things about the motors, but we know for a fact that in some situations, these results are not going to hold true if you're not using an AM32 ESC. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the results. And again, this is linked in the video description if you want to watch the whole thing. One of the things Chris points out is that is this the one showing the Mr. Steel motor? Is this the bottom one? Yeah,
the bottom line is Mr. Steel there.
This is torque versus RPM. And most people would say that higher is better because a motor that makes more torque is going to be more responsive, going to have a higher top-end power, yada, yada, yada. And the Mr. Steel motor here is the blue line. Didn't make a lot of torque. And some people are taking this and saying, see, Steel's motors are junk, they're overpriced, they're a waste, it's all a bunch of hype. That was not my first reaction. I'm curious if you want to share your reaction to that. Maybe I don't know.
My reaction to this is people have been throwing things from most companies at a board for a long time. And the fact that they land where they land is probably a surprise to most people who have not been doing testing like this in a lab making the motors.
Yep.
So, you know what I mean? Like, Steel's motor, he talks later in the video about air gap and magnet strength, and like magnet field strength, essentially. And, I would guess that that's just not testing people have been doing. They literally just make motors, they send them to Mr. Steel, he flies them and says, this is the one I like more, right?
I know for a fact people care about the air gap. I mean, people are aware of the air gap, but they're not doing the kind of testing that Chris is doing to get hard data. They're just relying on their feel and their preferences. So a person might say, I know there have been motors in the past that were intentionally made with a larger air gap, because a larger air gap, people argue, makes them more durable. With a very fine air gap, if the shaft is the tiniest bit bent, or the bell is the tiniest bit deformed, it'll rub, the motor is ruined. A motor with a larger air gap is going to run rougher, but it's going to be able to fly. So, for example, weaker magnets. There are people who have intentionally made motors with weaker magnets because they feel that the weaker magnets make the motor smoother and less notchy. I don't know if there's data to support that, but there certainly are reasons behind these decisions. But nobody has really, I haven't seen, people will do thrust stands and they'll get thrust versus amps, and that's basically it. That's where they stop. And it's nice to see somebody doing responsiveness, thrust, torque, I've never seen anyone measure torque like this on a motor before to sort of inform these decisions.
I think the common question that everybody is going to say is that those numbers don't mean that torque is required. That means that torque happened in the test, right?
It's available.
It's available torque. But if you're only using 0.05 in any flight situation, does that matter, right? I think are the kind of questions that people are going to have, right?
And I saw this, and I was like, I know for a fact that people are going to be just people who want to take shots at steel are going to use this data to do it. And I think that you certainly shouldn't let your personal feelings about somebody affect your interpretation of the data. I mean, like, is a $27 motor probably overpriced? A 5-inch motor? Yeah, I've said that. That's just as true of Steel's motors as anybody's, but obviously spend your money how you want. Now, here was my thought. Maybe a less powerful motor with less torque gives smoother flight response. Maybe like he shows the RC and power motors and the way the magnets are glued on, which makes the magnets stronger, versus Steel's motors, the magnets are kind of bedded down in, which makes the magnets weaker. But are Steel's motors less likely to drop a magnet because of the way the magnets are bedded in? With a larger air gap, are they more durable? I don't know the answer to these things. I do think it's important to realize that a single line on a chart is not the be-all, end-all of a motor's performance, and there are things like durability that are getting left out.
I would just chime in that I've never heard anyone say a stout is durable. Like I understand what you're saying, but from anecdotal information, I think the stouts are not on the list of motors that are doing things to be more durable. Or if they are, it's not. I don't know how well it's working.
But they're named stout.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
That is their name.
I feel bad about this because I think that motor manufacturing specifically, but a lot of other FPV stuff, and I think you agree with me here, it's like 90% marketing and hype and placebo effect and 10% data. And Chris Rosser is pushing that. And I think part of the problem is that some people look at this chart and go, this is all I need to pick a motor.
Yes.
And clearly, this one's the best, which is the
right.
No. And it's like we can dial that from 90% marketing and hype to, 75% and let Chris Rosser's data sort of push that back. But we can't let that slide the other way and act like a single chart is the only thing there is to know about a motor. Eric Toft has a great insight, too. Sample size. Chris tested one of each motor.
Definitely also true.
Yeah. But I mean, I struggle with this with battery testing. I mean, it takes so much time, and what is a good sample size? 30 is supposedly a good sample size. Okay, I'm going to spend $25 times 30 motors to test these motors, and then what? So, yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff from Chris Rosser. Short version: RC and Power wins. That's the short version. He likes RC and Power motors.
Yes. In these testing, it wins. I still posit that there is not a big practical difference in flight in most of these motors, and it's just up to personal preference.
I think you're right. Here's what we could say, Blunty. For engineers, hang on one second. There's some elephants walking around upstairs. Drives me crazy. Here's what we can say, Blunty. For engineers who want to measure torque on the bench with an AM32 ESC, those RC and Power motors win. For actual pilots who want to fly them, there may be other factors like cost, durability, or heck, you just like a certain color. People fly. I always go back to Cricket's motors. Are they the best motors? I don't know, but they're freaking gold-plated, and people freaking love them. And as long as at the end of the day, you could buy a $14 Emax Eco and still get good results for most people who are not trying to get that nth degree of performance out. But for people who are, it's good that Chris's data is there.
Yep.
All right. Whew, that was a fun one.
All right. Next up, remote ID.
Hate
it. love it or hate it. Most people hate it. I can see why, because remote ID sucks.
Let's do a poll.
Oh boy, if that doesn't go like,
you go ahead.
That better be super one-sided.
Start a poll.
But what I will say is, people have been worried about prices of modules and availability of modules, and what we'll have around to put on our drones, and what the cost will be, and things like that. And compared to a lot of the other headlines and things we've seen for hundreds of dollars, DroneTag has released a new module. They're currently getting it approved, but they have 2 already approved. I don't see why it wouldn't. They're rubber stamping these things to the FAA anyway. This is a module for standard remote ID for manufacturers to include, but I do have sort of a scoop, I guess, if you want to call it that, an image from Lucas in our FPV-FC chat as well, in our public FPV-FC Discord, which you can join if I'm a member of the FPV Freedom Coalition, where we figure a lot of this stuff out sometimes. And Lucas has shared information in that second part of the message there. DRI cannot be considered as full standard remote ID for end users, right? You can't do this and put it on your quad and get standard remote ID, but it can work with broadcast remote ID module with the receiver already on board of your drone. So basically, you stack this thing on your drone, you slap your GPS and you plug it in, you run a plug from it into your flight controller, so you're just like middle banding the GPS.
I see. This picture makes more sense now. So this is your GPS receiver. Well, this is a Pixhawk, but your GPS goes in one side, your flight controller goes in the other side. The flight controller doesn't even know this remote ID thing exists.
Correct.
The remote ID thing gets the GPS data and then does the remote ID thing to make the FAA happy. Is that what you're saying?
100%. You got it.
Oh, nice.
And currently, this is retailing for $49. That's correct. So at least we're seeing a smaller option. We're seeing an option that you can use. You're already using your already GPS, thing you already have with GPS in there in the drone, and it's fairly cheap. So I think we're just going to see that price driven down farther and farther and farther and farther, and then eventually, obviously, we're going to see Chinese clones who can do the paperwork, and that will depend on what they decide to accept. But so far, they've been rubber stamping these things. So for anybody who's super worried about this but does want to comply legally, technically, you should still be able to do that for pretty cheap as we move closer and closer to remote ID coming into bat.
Yeah. Tabio wants to know why it's a Euro coin, because it's a Czech company. They make remote ID modules. There are other countries that have remote ID similar rules. So this same hardware with different code could be adopted. But they're a Czech company. That's why. I Am Destructo Man wants to know, how do I install remote ID on my DJI FPV drone? That drone would need to support standard remote ID from DJI, basically. DJI would need to give you a firmware update. You wouldn't be able to adapt that, would you?
I mean, you could stick this with a sticky on the outside of the FPV drone, and then stick a GPS with a sticky on the outside of the drone, get it power somehow, and then run them over there. Okay. And you would technically be able to do module-based remote ID.
Brian, that's a good point, Blunty. Thank you for that. Brian Lewis wants to know if you can do BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight, with a module. Currently, I think the FAA only even considers BVLOS for standard remote ID, correct?
That's correct, yeah. You don't get the benefit with the module because I think it's because, I don't know if they really have a justification, but the difference between the two is that standard always broadcasts the person's location as well, where module-based does not. So I think there's some implication that at least they always know where you are with standard. So if you fly away, you still have a connection to the drone sort of thing. And I'm not really exactly sure how all that will technically work out, because the ranges of these are going to be so short that I'm not sure any of that will actually apply, right?
Right. But you're
Bluetooth
technically
5
compliant.
long range, which it'll be, it uses Bluetooth 5 long range, which technically could go up to 3 kilometers. I believe in some testing has been seen. But I think most of these modules are probably going to end up at 1 to 1.5 kilometers max distance.
Still more than most people think. I see people going, Bluetooth, that only goes 40 feet. The FAA are such dumbasses. And it's like, I'm not going to argue you about whether the FAA are or not. I'm going to step back from that question. But Bluetooth long range can go pretty freaking far.
The BT5 long range does 128 kilobit a second, like low data. It can do it at pretty good distances. So that's how they get it.
Sub 250 does not require remote ID, Steve Tricks. Now I'm self-conscious about how I say his name because he called me out on the last. How do you say his name? Now you just heard me do it, so.
It's Steve Vetrix. That's what I decided last time.
Steve Vetrix? Steve Vetrix. Okay. Stevatrix. I read that as Stevatrix.
That's fair.
Stevatrix.
Yeah.
Okay. This doesn't solve a lot of... Well, first of all, this doesn't solve all the issues. If it's $50 for this silly little module, then you have to either move it between your drones or you have to buy one for every drone. If you're a Part 107 operator, there's a whole bunch of other BS. But it's something, and we want you to know about it.
Yeah, we're at least giving you the update and letting you know where things are going. So
yeah. Interesting. Going back to the results of the poll. The results of the poll are remote ID, 8% love it, more than I thought. I wonder if those are troll votes or if they're sincere. Steve Trick. He wants it said Steve Trick. Steve Trick, why did you put an X there if you wanted it to be a K sound?
Wait, where did you get K from? All right.
He says in the Discord, it's Steve Tricks FPV, but the X is like a little... Oh, the X is a little prop. I thought it was a little pop. A little prop. Oh, he's going to use a prop there. Steve Tricks. All right, Steve Tricks FPV. Good for you. Okay.
Next up.
Before we do that, we're gonna do a breakdown of the Whooptopia. What's changed in the world of whoop racing? And before we do that, though, let's do our pluggables. Right? That's a good time to do that.
Yeah. And first up, we've got FPVKnowItAll.com.
You always let me go first. That's so nice of you.
Which is Joshua Bardwell's site with the ultimate FPV shopping list, where you can go and find some ideas of what to buy, and if you're trying to figure out what to buy and what to get started with, or what to upgrade to, or what the options are, we can get JB's recommended things with purchase links and some info about them.
Yeah, we just did a bunch of updates on the HD page. Got the HD0 goggles in here. We got the goggles 2, which were not on there until they were actually available for sale. And we're just continually trying to keep this up to date so people can get good recommendations about what to buy. It's a struggle. We're not always very up to date, but we try to stay as up to date as we can. We've also got ItsBlunty.com, which is Blunty's website. You can join his Patreon there, or you can sign up for a one-on-one call. A lot of times people are asking, how can I get on the phone with you? Because email support is so slow, and getting on the phone with me is tricky because I do a lot of email support. I don't have a lot of time for calls. But Blunty's available for $50. $50 an hour, and he could help you through your questions. Zoom meetings and phone call. Yeah, you can book right there at itsblunty.com.
We've also got the Clips channel, Joshua Bardwell live stream clips, where I go through and I cut out interesting things from your live streams. And recently started doing shorts because shorts are monetized now. I was going to say,
what is this at the top,
so
Blunty?
We're going to see how little money we get from shorts.
None.
Yeah, basically none. But we're going to try them out and see how they go. So.
All right. Well, 2,000 views. I mean, that's something. That's views. Sure, we'll give it a go. You can find excerpts from the live streams to help you get through this gap where I'm not streaming.
True.
And then last up, we've got searchfpv.com. Search FPV. Jekyll. God dang it. I struggle saying everybody's names. Nope, that's the wrong. It is on my website. Search FPV is right here, bro. He asked, can you put the links on the website? It's right here. It's right here. It's on every page of my website, man. Okay, not this page. On almost every page of my website, Search FPV is there. We got you. Jekyll. That's how I want to say it, but then I feel like that can't be the right way to say it. And then I try to mix it up. SearchFPV.com is a multi-store FPV search engine. You can choose your region of choice. You can choose specific stores that you like or don't like to shop at. And then you can pick in-stock items only and search for whatever you're looking for. Fox here, Reaper, VTX. I don't know. Just picking something randomly. Cool Cat has a note for you about the title of one of the clips, Blunty. It's in the chat. It's in the YouTube chat. Yeah, there we go. See? We just see results and can go and find the stuff in stock. So search FPV. Check it out. Go use it whenever you're looking for stuff. And those are our plugs. Yay, plugs. That's the wrong... See, there we go.
Yeah.
It's only me now. Okay, Blunty. Whooptopia.
All right. Whooptopia happened. And Eedok, one of the racers, put together a survey. Some information so we could check out in a nice little website. He even shared the code for it. But yeah, if you click on the first link there, it's got a little interactive page where we can check out what the results were.
Oh, exciting.
And so you'll see on the right, blue is elite, red is pro, orange is advanced. They kind of go down in tiers there.
Wow.
But something I thought was pretty interesting. There's a lot of cool info here. But if you scroll down...
BT 2.0 by far the lead, of course, for
Definitely.
racing. I mean, it's just better. 300 milliamp hour going. They're probably using 300 milliamp hour because they're all using square cells. And the square cells are all 300. That's probably more about the cell than the battery size. But Meteor 65, very popular frame. I've heard good things about it. Surprised the Fractal didn't get more love. Maybe durability. Not that the Fractal's not durable. Don't get me wrong. 4.35. Where are you going, Blunty?
Yeah.
Where do we scroll
Battery
down
bland. So if you keep going down a little bit, let's see where it is here.
These must be the Tiny Whoop 30,000 kV motors, I guess. Ooh, hang on. I know you're trying to get somewhere, but I'm fascinated. I haven't seen this data yet.
Yeah.
Roughly 50-50 mix of 0702 and 0802. That's interesting. I thought 0702 was like going to be way in the lead, but it's not. Very interesting. Motor KV.
So...
all over the place. Go ahead, Blunty.
If we keep going down, we'll find flight mode on the left, and that's kind of what I wanted to get to.
Okay. Any day now. Pointless. Flight mode right here.
All right, so if you click angle, I think angle's the best way to see it. If you click angle, you'll notice on the right-hand side, all the top pilots disappear, and then half of pro disappears. And then a lot of the other pilots do. And I think that's been a big change from the last years where, we had a lot more people on angle, except the very top racers, the people who are going super fast. So you've got basically 50-50 across the competition. And at the top level, seemingly, most of the people are flying Acro now. So that's pretty neat.
Someone asked in the Discord, what's Whooptopia? You want to just sum that up real quick?
Sure, yeah. It's just a big whoop race. It happens every year. And you can go find more information about that online. But yeah, it's a big race where everybody gets together and shoots it out. Probably
the top whoop race. Eedok thinks it's the top whoop race in North America. I can't really disagree with that. It's a big whoop race. It's a big deal. So it's a great place to pull data about what top whoop racers are doing. And Eedok's survey makes everybody more competitive the next year. We thought this was interesting, Blunty, because like last year, you and I noticed, you reported, and I nodded along, actually, is a fair way to put it, that people were starting to switch from angle mode to acro mode because a lot of the obstacles that whoop races were including were having a lot more vertical elements where the ability to turn upside down was a big deal.
I think last year was the year AK switched. I'm pretty sure that's the case. AK was angle for a long time. It was super fast and was angle. Then I think T-Dog's Whooptopia, and then also I think it was Whoop Wars, one of those events where T-Dog was kind of slamming them, and we saw AK change, and then AK kind of went acro, and we saw a lot of pilots end up going acro in that last year, I believe. So it's pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, now all the top pilots basically are running acro. And Eedok put in crash recovery. I made a video showing how to set up crash recovery if you're running acro. Of course, all the big pro pilots don't need that. so they weren't bothering. There was another tip by Eedok who said that if you filter by elites, then the motors, notice that when you filter by elites, everyone was using the Meteor 65. Everyone was using BT 2.0. And the stator size 0702 becomes much more prominent at the top level. So that's interesting, but not everybody. Do we know what the motor? I guess we don't. We know the motor brand.
It seems like a lot of people have been really just dropping motor brands on the left there, but it seems like a lot of people have really been dropping. That's weight. The weight's the big thing.
Exactly. If we pick 0802, who were they making? Tiny Whoop 0802 and 25,000 kV.
Yeah, you're only elites right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm wondering, the elites who ran 0802, what motor were they running? RCN Power Course. These are both very good motors. Surprised not to see any of the 30,000 kV that Ciotti loves so much. Maybe that's too much even for racing. Did anybody run 30,000 kV? We got 129,000. Literally one. Most people stand down around 25,000. So very interesting stuff. Thank you for the data there, Eedok. Well, there's more information out there about this acro versus angle mode. Plenty. That's our next story.
Yeah. So we also wanted to share a video from Johnny Fly, who went and did some testing based on some of this information and just seen a lot of pilots switch. And he wanted to see how it worked for him if he did some back-to-back testing and tried acro versus angle, and then angle versus acro, kind of switched back and forth across two different quads and did some testing. And he's got some interesting results, I would say. But basically, to sum it up, some of them were pretty close, but he saw basically a lot of improvement from acro in most cases.
Yeah. Blunty, you had an interesting observation as we were talking about this before the stream, and you said, if I had time to practice, well, you go ahead. Tell them what you said.
Yeah, what I learned from doing the weekly whoop races in Velocidrone on the sim was that, you can practice those as much as you want because we get told about the tracks a week ahead of time. And what I found was, at least with my skill level, if I practice a whole bunch on acro, I'm going to get better times and do way better overall on acro. But if I don't practice that week, I do much better on angle.
Yeah, and angle's more forgiving.
Because I'm going to crash because I don't know the track, or I'm going to get lost or whatever. And angle is just going to be way easier, way more forgiving, way less like mental work while I'm trying to make sure I remember where the track is and stuff. That's just been my experience with it. And I imagine that will go away with a lot more practice and flying on it. But that was my case, at least my experience with it. So.
Yeah, the big advantage of angle mode to me has always been that when you hit an object, the quad automatically recovers. And in whoop racing, it's so tight and so small that you're much more likely to hit an object, I think. People hit gates in MultiGP racing, but you hit a gate in MultiGP, you go flying into the sky, you more often have time to recover. Whereas if you're in a tight environment, like we're seeing here on Johnny Fly's video, there's just much less time to recover with whoop racing. And that's, to me, has been the advantage of acro mode, or angle mode, which is consistent with what you're observing. Because if you have time to practice the track, then you're much less likely to make a mistake. You know where all the stuff is. But if you're having to feel out the track, then angle mode is going to save you from your own mistakes.
Yeah, or if you're just like practicing all the time. In this case, he did know the track pretty well, so that is a factor for sure. But I think also if you're just flying acro all the time, I think there's going to be a lot of cases where you're just going to be way faster in acro because you're so used to doing it. But I think if you do both, at least in my experience, that was the case. So.
Yep. All right. Well, you want to be fast at whoop racing, you got to switch to acro. That's the place to be. Aeon, Vistas are okay. Air Units died. I knew people were going to be confused about this, and I tried. Keep watching the stream, Aeon. You'll catch up. I knew people were going to be confused about it.
Or go back, whichever.
Or go back to where you missed, where we clarified this. Well, we got more racing news.
This came in pretty hot off the presses. I noticed this right before I finished putting the show together. But basically, MultiGP. Oh, I did not. It's in the MultiGP group.
Well, I guess I'm not in that group. Oh no, wait! I know what's happened. I am in that group. I'm just on my business account because Facebook is confusing as crap. There we go. I got it. I'm like, I'm in the MultiGP group.
So yeah, today we got an update from MultiGP. They updated their website to 2.0, so they got a nice new fancy website. But the main thing I thought was interesting is they are announcing official partnerships with 3 new spec leagues, including Tiny Whoop Spec, Freedom Spec, and Street League Spec. So now you can make those when you organize a race, and they're partnering with them. So I think, to me, that's a pretty cool move because, we've talked a lot about how spec racing, I think, is the future of the hobby for spectators. And that's how you're going to get people into the hobby. And also open class, as people have mentioned, it can be really difficult to get in and maintain because you're buying a lot of parts and pieces and you're always trying to compete and, that sort of thing. So I don't know. It's really cool to see these officially recognized, and they say stay tuned for much more info. So, I'm looking forward to see more support of spec racing in MultiGP.
Yeah, I agree. MultiGP has this amazing infrastructure and organization for running races. I don't just mean the website, but I also mean the network of people connected to MultiGP, which is, of course, probably the biggest resource. And to see them embracing the spec racing, I think can only be a good thing. And credit also to the creators of these leagues. Of course, Jesse Perkins, probably as much as anybody, could be credited for Tiny Whoop Racing, Evan Turner for Freedom Spec, and now I'm going to offend somebody. Who is the founder of Street League?
I don't know. I didn't start that sentence.
Okay. Damn. Well, whoever you are, thanks. Chat, help me out here. Save me. It's too late. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Chat's not coming around yet. That's too slow. Lead fingers. Jordal says lead fingers. All right. Well, cool. All right.
All right. Next up, it's barely news.
But before we do that,
okay,
if we may, let's read the super chats.
Okay.
So I got this idea for how we should do things now. I should have told you that I was going to.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to put the plugs in the middle of the show.
Okay.
And then I'm trying to put the super chats before it's barely news, so people stick around and hear them.
10-4.
Yeah. Whoop. Did you read the memo that I didn't send? Yeah. No, you missed that. Steve Tricks. Steve Tricks FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. Not sure if you saw my comment on your latest Spang video, but several people mentioned it. You need music to do Spang. The problem, Steve, is, of course, that if I make a YouTube video with commercial music in it, then it'll get demonetized, potentially. Which, I mean, not that my Spang videos are making a ton of money anyway, but I usually try to avoid that. But I do appreciate that Spang is best with music and feel. Can we do a quick aside here? Yeah.
Something I thought was interesting and may come to official YouTube, would be amazing if it did, right? Shorts just got, for some inside baseball, shorts are now monetized.
Yep.
So if you're watching shorts, in some cases you may see advertising. And those short advertisements are split across all the people you've seen in the last 5 minutes or so. It sort of gets spread. That funding gets spread. But one of the neat things is that money all gets pulled together from those advertisers, and then they spend that money on the rights to the music people have used.
Yeah, so, I think I did hear about that.
If they collect $60,000, let's say, in this pocket, right, and you use $10,000 worth of music across the creators, they'll pay that out and then split the money between everybody else. Whereas normal YouTube videos, all that money would have gone to the music label.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that, Blunty. I actually just heard about that. The way the monetization split was working today on Linus Tech Tips live stream. And it didn't occur to me to think that, right now, if you use licensed music, one of two things will happen. If the music has not made a deal with YouTube, then you just get a copyright strike. And if you get 3 of those, your channel gets taken down. So that's kind of a big deal. But most commercial music has partnered with YouTube so that YouTube will take the ad money from that video and give all of it to, well, I guess YouTube probably keeps some for themselves. But they don't give any money to you. They give it all to the person whose music you used, which actually the way that the shorts are doing it makes a lot more sense. They give a cut of the music to the money to the producer, but you still get a cut. I would be way more likely to use commercial music if that was the way it was. But as it is now, I don't get anything.
I think essentially they're using the idea that you're pooling, I think, to pay them out. So like this one song was heard over the course of this time, but it only counts as like 1 or 2 plays of it. The license is applied for that time or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting idea, and hopefully we can see that move into different areas where we could use licensed music for some percentage of the money would be great. You know?
Yeah. I need two things to use that currently don't exist. And this is very inside baseball, but what the heck. One of them would be that if I put commercial music in the video, you take a fair cut of it to compensate the company or person whose music I use. I'm fine with that, but don't take all of it. In fact, there's a trick people do where they write an original composition, they register it through a service like CD Baby that gets you into Content ID, and then they put that in their video like as the outro track, and then they Content ID claim their own video, so that then when Sony Music content claims their video, it's a 50-50 split between all the rights holders, which is them. and that's a trick people use. It's I forget what he called it. Anyway, no, I'm not going to do that. The other thing I need is the ability to know whether the music will get me copy struck.
That'd
and right
be
now,
wonderful, wouldn't it?
The only way to do that is upload the video and cross your fingers.
That literally existed. There was literally a database you could type it into and search for it, and they took it away.
Because fuck you. Sorry, apologize, parents. I was just saying. But yeah, it used to exist. And I would go, hey, I'd like to use this song, and I'd go look it up. And YouTube would say, yep, if you use that, you will not be able to make any money, but we're not going to take your channel down. I'd be like, okay, I'm fine with that. And as it is, I don't want to risk it. So I just don't do it. All right. Well, not like YouTube cares about making our life better, but continuing. Doug Wolf, thank you for a $5 super chat. Doug wants a lap RF alternative or a restock. Guess what? Good news. Immersion RC, I saw on their Facebook page just last week, announced that they were going to do another run of lap RFs. However, it's the 8-way lap RF, which is probably not what you want, Doug, unless you run a MultiGP chapter. They are doing another run of 8-way lap RFs. As far as the one-way lap RFs, I don't know about that. Blizzard FPV. The alternative, I guess, Blunty, is what is the alternative? I have the parts for one. You sent them to me. What's that lap timer?
Oh, compared to like an 8-way is a Delta 5.
Not an 8-way though, just for like an individual. Is that also Delta 5?
Yeah, an individual. A Delta 5 is going to cost too much, I think, for an individual. You can build. Oh man, I don't remember the name of it. Pid Flight. I think it's called Pid Flight.
What's the one you just sent me?
That's a Delta 5. That's like 4 or 8 racers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's meant for a chapter.
Yeah. So there are alternatives out there. I don't actually have one I can recommend, to be honest with you. Is Pid Flight good, or are you just like remembering that it exists?
I built one and it was okay.
Eedok suggests Chorus lap timer. Chorus, like the music. I guess Eedok knows a thing or two about racing. Rotor Hazard is another one. That's another one. That's good software.
That's software, but yeah, we need hardware.
You need the hardware. Yeah, Rotor Hazard. Yeah. Blizzard FPV. Thank you for $2 Canadian. Maybe Steel only cares about Porsche motors. Yeah, Steel is a Porsche race driving instructor. So I'm sure still cares about FPV motors. The Dark Side, thanks for a $5 super chat. Any chance you'll mess with 3D again? Firmware is handling it so much better now. Of all the things I could spend time playing with, I don't think that's going to be it. But that's an honest answer to your question. But thank you for a $5 super chat. Okay, time for It's Barely News.
It's Barely News. Okay. First up, we've got... what I'm going to say is an expected story about Amazon drone deliveries. This is basically goes along with what we've said for a while. Amazon has barely delivered anything so far, or as this wonderful headline says, Amazon drones have reportedly delivered to fewer houses than there are words in this headline.
Oh my goodness, that's a great headline.
That is a great headline. And it is true, because basically they've delivered to as few as 7 houses as the report, 2 in California and 5 in Texas total. And they are citing issues with the FAA and trying to organize flights over the road and get everything worked out for these flights. So sounds like they're being stifled into not being able to do many of these deliveries, and the ones they are doing are working okay, but not great. So I think, as we expected, all this stuff was sized down. A lot of people got fired from the department, and now we're seeing them do basically no deliveries and get stifled by the FAA. I'm thinking it's not long for this world.
Yeah. Amazon's just going to stick to, underpaid truck drivers peeing in bottles, running around to deliver their stuff. They are the drones. Okay.
Fortunately true.
Next up,
we've got a mobile FPV sim by Nate Harms FPV. He made a little simulator. I believe he made this in 7 days as a learning tool and stuff. But 7-day challenge to build a mobile FPV sim. And he did that. So if you want to check it out, you can do that. It's pretty cool. We got a link down in the show notes for the APK.
I remember a couple years ago that Vanover and Minchan had this mobile sim that you like to play. It was only available for iPhone, and they would race on it, and they would just be sitting there. Well, Vanover, Minchan wasn't there. That's the beauty of the internet. And he'd be racing on this thing just like this with your fingers on the screen and going as fast as Vanover always goes. And I thought, how can you possibly do that? Like get a good result out of a simulator with your fingers on the screen. But apparently it's a thing. So there you go. Very cool. And it's free? No, it's pay what you want. Is that right?
It's free. Yeah, it's itch.io, so it's free. You don't have to pay any money if you don't want. Or if you would like to, you can give them some money. It's free.
Name your own price. Yeah,
it's got active development and stuff, and pretty cool. So if you want to check out something somebody made pretty quick, I've heard pretty good things about it, and it seems perfect for It's Barely News.
Nice. If you buy it, if you get it for free, and then decide that you like it, you could always you don't like it, you just forget it, delete it. If you decide that you like it, you can always just buy it again and give them a little cash. Alrighty, Blunty, what do we got next?
All right, next up is drones are being used instead of drop towers for gravity experiments. And this is one of those applications that I think a lot of people who are not in any of these industries have any idea about. And it's pretty cool. Because basically, this company figured out that you could use quadcopters for dropping capsules that need to be weightless, right? So they've been previously doing experiments where you get rights to go up in a thing where you sign up for a service, basically. So there's a drop tower, but they said basically you need to wait several years. There's a huge long access list for it, and the drop tower only gives you like 2 or 3 seconds of weightlessness. And this can do 5 to 20 seconds based on elevation with just a drone. So pretty cool that this factor of testing can now be a lot easier and simpler for people.
Neat. Oh, that's the perfect thing for a drone.
Yeah.
Very cool. We got a couple other stories about good things that drones are doing.
Yeah, we got a hiker that was found by a drone. He was stranded and reached by search and rescue because a drone found him out in the wilderness, out in the country.
Just to be clear, this is not the drone. This appears to be a helicopter. I was confused there for a moment when I saw the hiker. I was like, "Whoa! Is a drone lifting that hiker into the air?" No. We got any drone footage? Come on, give us drone footage, baby.
I think later on there is some footage. Yeah.
Oh. But Blunty, rescuing hikers, that's all well and good. But rescuing sheep, now that's way cuter.
Yeah. So yeah, much the same in the same respect. They got a drone out here to rescue this sheep. So yeah, he couldn't figure out what was going on and was able to get a drone to figure out what was going on with these sheep, and then get them saved and rescued.
Oh, what happened to the sheep? Are they just stuck in the mud? Oh, yeah, the mom and 2 lambs.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, poor sheep. There's a beautiful color on that camera. The green is beautiful. Oh no, the mom is stuck. Oh no. What's wrong with her? She doesn't look well. Has she injured herself? Doesn't look good. Oh, that's a bad scene. Is she okay? Does she hop right back up? Come on. Let's get her up and out of there. Oh, that's not a good scene. Hopefully mom is alive and well and was just a little, she was just, yeah, just a little confused or tired. I have to know.
Yeah, the sheep's been struggling for a long time, so.
I see. She was like stuck in the mud and was just tired out.
Yeah, but she did leave of her own accord after a little rest, so.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Yeah, get on out of there, Mama. All right, we have to get the happy ending. No, he's still dragging her around. Okay, come on now. Oh, there she goes. She's not entirely. She's got some recovery to do. Okay, all right. Well, that's the best I think we're gonna get. Oh.
Oh, right.
Next up.
Next up, we've got a drone that saved a puppy that was stuck in the drain.
Oh my God! A puppy being lifted by a drone. Why was a drone needed to do this? Why not just like have a human do it? Like,
yeah, I can't tell you the answer to that.
It does seem like that rope could have been lifted by a human. I mean,
I would agree.
Okay, I hate to tell you this, Blunty. This is fake. This is fake. How did the dog? Okay, no, this is fake. Sorry, this is clickbait. How did the dog get into that harness?
That's why this is barely news, because we're just showing a good story and then we're moving on.
No, I'm sorry. This is just people making shit content. Like, this isn't far from the worst I've seen. This dude just put the dog in the harness and dropped him down there and then lifted him out with a drone and was like, hey, we're going to get 1 million views. Let's see. 12,000 views. No, thumbs down. Fake. I disagree. I only want real stories of drones saving animals. Like this one.
All right, next up, we've got, just a story about a guy who has been basically saving drones all over the world. He goes to disaster zones and uses his infrared drone to find animals who need rescuing and then save them.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. That's a great use. Oh, yeah. I see a lot of information there. Oh, like this dog. No, that's just his dog. Is that a rescue dog? Oh, yeah. Very nice. We're always a fan of people saving dogs with drones. So, we got just a couple more super chats coming in here at the end. One from I Am Destructoman. Thanks for $10, Destructoman. Appreciate the support. And that is going to bring us to the end of the stream. Ooh, we had a long stream today, Blunty.
Yeah, well, that's good, because we won't be back for a while. In case any of you missed it at the beginning of the show, we've got a couple weeks off. And we'll be back on the 28th of February for this show.
Correct. And if you are missing us, head on over to Joshua Bardwell live stream clips and check out clips of older live streams, or there'll be more clips coming out over the next few weeks. You actually said you space the clips out and you sometimes hold some back in case there's a break. So there will be more content over there. Yeah,
I've still got 4 more Q&As to splice up for clips.
Nice.
So.
Nice. But that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thanks for the questions, chats, and super chats. And we will see you on the 28th. Will be the next news. I'll probably still stream that weekend, but the 28th will be the next news. So we'll see you there. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
All right. There we go.